Welcome all to the channel, and I have a special video for you today. But before we get started, I need to shout out Marlon Anthony, who created the best football video game documentary ever created, covering Konami's Pro Evolution Soccer over the years, all the way up through to eFootball, the entire history. It is bar none the best documentary, video game documentary, football game whatever you want to title it under. It is far underviewed. You need to go check it out in its entirety. Over 2 hours long. Marlon Anthony, his history of PES. It's incredible. And some of the footage from today is from his masterpiece that he created. So shout out to Marlon for this trip down memory lane. And I will take you on a trip down memory lane to get back to the roots of how it all got started with Konami and with Pro Evolution Soccer that is now eFootball as we know it today, and how it coincided with my own development as a football player and my own development as a video game enthusiast, and in particular a football video game enthusiast. And it will explain why I'm so passionate about staying true to the beautiful game and staying true to all the work that has gone in over the years to keep eFootball what it is today. Now, before we take a ride all the way back to those early days of games when I was just a young child, let's talk about what eFootball is now and how Konami, despite creating these masterpieces, including the masterpiece that it has now, let's talk about where they went wrong and where they desecrated their own creation, right? Largely, if not all, due to greed. Because there's a large number of players, as I've said many times, that want to take shortcuts, that don't want to play football the right way. And Konami decided to cater to them for the sake of gaining their money. That's where my biggest problem with the game is, both with those players who have totally disgraced the history of the game and with Konami, who totally disgraced their own masterpiece, right? Which you will see in this video, largely consistent over all the years, is how Konami stayed true. Sometimes more than others. They veered away sometimes and went towards the arcade route because they were trying to read the market. But no matter what, they kept some ties, at least some, to the beautiful game and to keeping it realistic and true to what football is all about. And so that is largely why I get so upset when I play these players, and then when I see the oversaturated AI assistance that takes away from the player making the decisions and that takes away from the beauty of what eFootball is. But how did we get to this point to even have a masterpiece underneath all that nonsense? Because at least it's still there for players like myself in this entire community, and hopefully others as we grow and gain more people on our bandwagon. How did we get to this point where the game still is a masterpiece at its core? Well, it all starts here with International Superstar Soccer, which we will refer to as ISS. Now, the naming changed over the years, right? That's one thing that's consistent, is there was naming in North America, naming over in Asia, and it went all different ways. So to not be confused, you have International Superstar Soccer, you have Winning 11, you have Pro Evolution Soccer, right? Which is what it evolved into, where like my formative years, my true, what I would call my golden years playing Konami's football video game, that's what I largely knew it as. Not that I didn't know about these other titles and didn't play them growing up, but as the years went on and consoles kept evolving and the game kept evolving, these names all are synonymous with Konami's football game that we all know today as eFootball, right? And in the early years, it was hard, obviously, to really keep the realism in the game. They were pretty much neck and neck with EA Sports' football video games in that they were very limited in what they could do. And through these times, I was fine playing either football video game, right? Really anything associated with the game of football, because it was so sacred in the United States. We didn't have MLS yet. Even when MLS was newer, it wasn't really on TV. So me loving the game of football, or as we called soccer early on, any chance I could to get a VHS tape of the top goals, or watch what we called Soccer Saturday, where we could watch the top European leagues just for one day early in the morning on the weekend. Just, you could turn on the TV on any given night and watch baseball, basketball, football, whatever. But soccer, as the world calls football, that was a special event because we didn't get to watch it very much. So the same with video games, bringing my favorite sport, my dad's favorite sport to life and getting to enjoy it, especially with my father playing all these early games. It didn't matter which game it was, right? But for me, where I started seeing that Konami went the more realistic route, whereas EA Sports and FIFA went the more arcade route, was the N64 series, right? I think it was called International Superstar Soccer 64, and then the names changed slightly as it went. But the N64 version was when I first got a glimpse of more realistic football, and then I really started noticing it from the PlayStation versions early on, right away from regular PlayStation, where the feel of Konami's version of the game was more true to life, and EA Sports' FIFA version was more arcade. So that's where I started falling in love more with Konami's version, even though it wasn't as popular, especially with many of my friends, just like I'm sure a lot of us can relate to this, that didn't know the game as well and that didn't like that punishing feeling of not being able to properly say way to pass or understand the tactical, approach to the game as much, right? They like the more arcade version, and Konami knows that, and as you see over the years, they kind of wrestle with that. But to give them credit, they never fully just abandoned the realism of their game, staying tied to true football, as opposed to, yes, it's a football simulator, but like FIFA, for instance, with EA Sports, they simplified it and wanted to make it more flashy, more arcade-like, didn't care at all that it wasn't true to football, right? Konami always at least had some strings attached to the roots of the beautiful game and keeping it realistic, which means not every pass is going to be perfect. Not every shot's going to be perfect. You're not going to be able to just dribble the ball from end line to end line and do all kinds of different skill moves and score upper bends every single shot. You get what I'm saying? There's a realistic feel. There's mistakes that come. There is practice that has to go into football so you get better. There's an art to getting your whole team of 11 players to build the ball up and create chances and score goals. And if you don't do it correctly, it can be ugly and you can get punished. And that's what Konami recognized as, whether they were true footballers themselves or just understood the game themselves, as opposed to it always felt like EA Sports, there wasn't a real footballer in the bunch. They just sort of knew the general, look and understanding of the game and then tried to say, how can we make this cool? So if you tie that to my age, when I started noticing the more realistic approach, when everyone started noticing kind of the difference, the fork in the road in these football games where they took separate paths, that put me at around 10, 11, something around there, right? And up to this point, I had been going back and forth playing both games, but always FIFA would prevail because of my friends, because of the pop culture that takes over when you're a young kid, right? That was the game that everyone played, and therefore that was the game that I was going to play. Even though I love football and I love the realistic approach, it just never surpassed EA Sports' FIFA, at least in the United States, and at least around that time period for me. Until we fast forward to around 04, 05, 06, all the way through about 2007 or 8, I believe. Again, roughly, give or take. But I'll still never forget the golden years for me playing Konami's Pro Evolution Soccer. Now this puts me at the end of high school going into college, and that's where, of course, between training, games, all of that, we have to rest, and so we are playing football video games, and we are playing Konami's Pro Evolution Soccer, or as we called PES. Now, for the life of me, I can't remember the exact numbers, but what I do remember is that it was the most realistic football game ever, and we loved it because it took your actual knowledge of the game and added that to your skill set on the pitch. You would be punished if you didn't pass correctly, if you didn't choose the right shot, power up the right shot. All of these things were taken into consideration, and that was the first time we had ever seen something like that, especially from all of us coming from a FIFA background where it was super arcade feeling, right? Meaning every shot would be top ends, every pass would connect like there was a magnet on every player's foot. It was the best feeling ever to go into a video game and actually take your knowledge of the game and be able to play realistically. And also, it was so rewarding because you did have those punishing moments, right? As you were getting better, where passes would be just off, shots would be missed, all because of your inconsistencies on the sticks. No different than your punishment in real football when you weren't focused or you made a mistake, you took the wrong type of shot, you put too much on it, didn't put enough on it. Same with passing. All of these things, when you had the wrong tactical approach that didn't match how you played, all of these things are taken into consideration. And so around these numbers, the Pro Evolution 4, 5, 6s, and so on and so forth, we had a blast, and it really put a lasting impression on me as far as football video games, and one that stays with me today, and one that really brought out the reason why I love eFootball and why I wish I knew that the game just didn't fall off, which was largely what everyone thought, including myself. And it might sound crazy because all I had to do was play the game, right? Well, you got to think, after these golden years, right, which fell off around the end or middle, it might even been the beginning of PlayStation 3, where everyone sort of went back to FIFA because around that time, Konami just totally abandoned their realistic approach and tried to just be another FIFA. And we all were like, well, we don't want another FIFA, but you can't out FIFA a FIFA game, right? You can't out arcade them. So now that we don't have the choice to play this ultra realistic game that we love, most everyone went back to FIFA. All the way up to eFootball. That was the case. So all those amazing moments that were created that we thought were going to be there forever. We didn't imagine in a million years that Konami was going to abandon this amazing approach. And I know now, looking back and watching Marlon Anthony's documentary, that a lot of it came with the evolving technology and not being able to keep up with certain things, and as well as something I say a lot right now, which is that Konami is brilliant. Like, if you look at math, they're like rocket scientists, but for some reason they can't do times tables. That's what it feels like many times. And some of these mistakes that cost them, players like myself and all my college teammates and players like us, were those type of mistakes, right? That just can't seem to be explained. So what I'm saying is, we all went to FIFA and all the way through to eFootball until I finally gave it a chance when I started my channel and started talking to people I respected, and they started saying things about the game that largely reminded me of these golden years. I just thought it was another nonsense version that Konami just kept putting out. That was always going to be secondary and that was never going to be good. So, to my pleasant surprise, eFootball absolutely embodies the spirit of that true football feeling. That punishment when you're off. That skill gap that's created not just on the pitch, but with your tactical knowledge, your understanding of football as a whole. And that's why these players that choose shortcuts, that play this nonsense anti-football formations and play styles and constant spamming of through balls and this and that, not to mention Konami themselves falling into assisting these low-level, low-skill players that don't want to put the work in, that don't truly appreciate the beautiful game for what it is and for what this video game represents of the beautiful game, right? So Konami recognized all these players that aren't going to play if they're losing, and they provide all this assistance, so they keep spending money. They keep buying the players to then go do all their nonsense and not even respect what the game is, and Konami's okay with it because they get paid. And that is sickening because they created a masterpiece and just essentially sold themselves out for money. So you might say a company that put in all this work all these years, if they're okay with it and they even provide assistance to this nonsense, then why do you get so mad about it? Well, because it's always been about the players, not the developers. No different than Star Wars. George Lucas created it, but guess what? It's all about the fans that made Star Wars what it is. It's not about George Lucas. His creation outgrew him. And that's a nod to him still. It's not a disrespect to him, but you better believe it's all about the fans that brought Star Wars to life. Just like it's all about the player base that brought Konami's eFootball to life all these years when it was Pro Evolution Soccer, Winning 11, ISS. It doesn't matter the name, that brought Konami's football game to life. And the problem is, in this most recent era of microtransactions and winning, and whatever else created this most recent player base, all of that has been compromised, right? All of that history and everything that the Konami player base stood for, right? We'll call it the Konami player base because it had so many different names depending on where you were in the world and all that. But all these players that love the game for the realism, right? For all the great moments that were created. No different than in real football. The glory, the agony, all of the work you put in, the feeling when things pay off, you finally learn a new setup, you finally are finishing the right way, creating great passing sequences that lead to goals, right? All of these things over all the years, all these great memories in this great football, that's what we need to hold true as a player base now that loves real football, that loves why Konami is separate from EA Sports, why Konami is superior as far as staying true to the beautiful game. EA Sports, FIFA will always be that arcade football game, no matter how many players play it, no matter how popular it is, no matter how much more money they have, whatever. The bottom line is, eFootball is the footballer's video game. That's the bottom line. eFootball is football's video game. And it's up to the players that respect the game of football, that respect that it takes work to get better, that it takes time, that there's highs and lows in football, and that's what makes it the beautiful game, right? All the beautiful passing sequences that just don't come easy. Just like football doesn't come easy. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes sacrifice, right? There's highs, there's lows. But these players nowadays in eFootball, they just want to win, and they don't care how. So you get this anti-football nonsense formation, spamming everything they can spam, not football, as well as all the assistants in the world to take away decision making from them because they're not true football players. They don't want to learn to be true football gamers at all. And so you have this great game at its core that pays homage to all the years of staying true to the beautiful game with this blemish on it, right? Which is this group of players that makes a large amount of the player base of eFootball, right, that needs to be eradicated. And once you cut the proverbial head of the snake off, then the overkill AI assistants will disappear too, because Konami will no longer have that loser level of players to cater to, so they keep spending money. And we can get back to what this game is truly meant to be and what the players over the years fell in love with. So the biggest thing to realize is that if we don't do this, meaning if we don't spread this game as it should be and keep the roots of this game strong and thriving even in today's game, it will just disappear and fade into nothing if we just left it up to, for instance, Konami, because we've seen in the past how they will blunder things. We've seen in the past how they will do things that are unexplainable that really cost this game and have players scratching their heads and really leaving players in disappointment. But the good news is the game as it is, at its core, is a great game. We could be stuck with a game that lost its way and that just isn't realistic anymore. Similar to what myself and many of my fellow players that were in my area felt with PES immediately following the golden years, and the years that gave myself and all of my friends a lot of amazing memories in video game football, right? It was almost like Konami jumped off a cliff with their game because they tried to be like FIFA. And I don't know if it was this exact game, but I know it was around here where they went from the PES 6, 7, 8 to try to be like FIFA, which was where they made the biggest mistake, trying to go that more arcade route like FIFA, probably thinking that would get them more money and that's what players wanted. But they lost a ton of players that loved their game when they did that. And I remember it was around when they went with like PES 2008, 2009, whatever, again, to try to be like FIFA with the title, with their gameplay, with everything. And of course, it didn't work because FIFA had the arcade style football on lock. But Konami has the true football video game feel on lock, and it's still in the game. So I will be on a journey. I don't care if I was the only person on the planet that played eFootball the way it can be played, the way it should be played. I'm still going to do it. But I know that my community and many others out there that haven't discovered, others like myself, my community that want to play this game how it is meant to be played, don't want all the non-football nonsense, don't want all the AI assistants that take away from the work that it goes into being a good e-footballer, if you will, just like all the work that goes into being a good footballer in real life. And so the more we play this game, staying true to what eFootball is at its core, the more that will spread and the less and less losers there will be, because they will be overtaken by true eFootballers. So, as always, keep grinding, keep fighting the good fight, always have fun, which you will have fun playing this game how it is meant to be played. And remember, the struggles are part of football. The highs, the lows, they're part of football. You aren't always going to get the best of your opponent. You aren't always going to win, and that is the problem, because you aren't supposed to just win and have nothing but highs. So, keep grinding. You will improve, and when you reach that level of success that you're yearning for, it will be that much more satisfying. It will be that much more rewarding. So all of you nonsense, low-level, non-footballers that play this game, take this as your final warning. We are coming for you. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.